Alright, what's going on, folks? Old soldier coming at you again today from Robeson County, North Carolina, where temperature has warmed up. It's a little breezy, but it's not absolutely freezing. Last night was cold. I think we woke up this morning to 29, 30 degrees, somewhere in that ballpark. Anyway, like I said yesterday, last week, there's information, misinformation, Psyop information, if you will, and then just people randomly putting stuff out there in hopes that if they say it long enough, it'll become true. Say that to say this, that while it would make my heart real happy to see Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and all that ilk get iron bracelets slapped on their wrist and they all get sent to Gitmo for treason, along with Barack Obama and his husband Michael. Yeah, I said it. A bit of a realist too, I guess, in that sense, that if something was going to happen, it would have happened by now. Now, mind you, one of the pieces of information floating out there is that all this is supposed to take place tomorrow, right before the inauguration. There's all these arrest warrants that have been issued. But I will say this, though. 25,000 troops, federal, National Guard, or otherwise, is a bit excessive for a presidential inauguration. The real question is, why have so many been requested? That's more troops at the Capitol right now than was ever stationed at the Capitol during the entirety of the Civil War, when the Capitol was threatened on more than one occasion by the Confederate Army. If you go back and look at history, you know, it's more troops than that was sent there to protect the Capitol during the civil rights and draft riots during the 60s. I think I spoke some of them yesterday, speak on it again today. The FBI was supposed to start vetting these 25,000 troops because there's fears that some of these troops were super loyal to President Trump, blah, 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 blah. Wait a minute. I took oath of enlistment, just like everybody else. And let me explain some stuff, folks. If you don't know anything about the National Guard, the National Guards, they were formed shortly after the Spanish-American War. Okay. What happened during the Spanish-American War? We were still under when the federal government needed a boost to the regular forces, they would send out a call to the states to raise volunteers. And these states would raise volunteer regiments, if you will. Okay? And these regiments would then be organized into brigades and divisions and corps, etc. And 9 out of 10 times, they would augment regular units. Case in example, General Pershing, who was a young captain at the time, was commanding a troop in the 9th Cavalry. If you know anything about the 9th Cavalry, it was an all-black cavalry regiment. The 9th and the 10th, to be exact. They fought alongside with the 1st United States Volunteer Cavalry Regiment, i.e. Roosevelt's Rough Riders. Okay? Now, mind you, Roosevelt's regiment was not originally his. It was under command of another officer who was eventually promoted. Okay? And a lot of times these volunteer regiments would receive leadership, or, I mean, receive, that's kind of a poor choice of words. How do I want to phrase it? Regular officers of the regular army would usually be given command of many of these regiments initially, and sometimes through the entire campaign. And other times they would be there for a temporary measure and they'd move on to other assignments. Such is the case of the 1st U.S. Volunteer Cavalry Regiment, which was commanded by Colonel Leonard Wood, i.e. Fort Leonard Wood. He was eventually promoted to Brigadier General, I believe it was. And Theodore Roosevelt was moved up to command the entire regiment. He'd been the regiment's deputy commander. So that's kind of how that worked there, okay? Long story short is after the Spanish-American War, the War Department determined that that was not exactly the best way to mobilize forces from the states, so they came out with the National Guard Act, and I forget what year it was in. But eventually the National Guard was formed. And every state was authorized to form one. Okay? They'd fall initially under the control of the governor, but in times of national emergency could be federalized and fall under the command of the President of the United States. Okay? And from World War I, World War II, Korea, and even a small unit during the Vietnam War, actually were called to active duty in the course of the Gulf War, and then the second Gulf War and wars in Afghanistan as well. National Guard units have gone and pulled tours of duty. So, why am I bringing all that into mention? Because when they take the oath of enlistment, they take an oath of enlistment to support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of their respective states that they're from. So they take 2 oaths. Now, here is a catch that many of these National Guard Adjutant Generals, now, what's a National Guard Adjutant General? He's a senior ranking general within that state. Commands all the National Guard forces within the state, whether it's Air Force or Army. And that's the only 2 branches that have National Guard. It's Army and Air Force. The Navy, the Marine Corps, and Coast Guard do not. They only have reserves. Okay? Army and Air Force have reserves too. Anything that says reserves is federal. If they say they're National Guard, they are under the control of the state unless otherwise ordered to active duty by the President. Okay? So now, that being said, 25,000 or so troops that are at the Capitol right now, are they under federal orders, i.e. under the command of the President of the United States of America, or are they there under state orders and under the control of their respective governor, who may be loaning his National Guard out to the District of Columbia's Adjutant General, because yes, the District of Columbia has its own National Guard units with its own adjutant and etc. so forth. Okay? So that's the real question I've got there. Under whose control are they? And why do they need 25,000 troops? Not to mention, there is the video of looks like a construction worker showing a checkpoint being set up in Washington, D.C. And friends, it looks a lot like the checkpoints we set up in Iraq during the second go-round over there. Okay? Why, in our nation's capital, would we need checkpoints throughout the entirety of that city? Somebody answer that for me, because right now, I'm not seeing any logical, reasonable, nor acceptable answer for that. Okay? And honestly, Washington, D.C. has one of the largest law enforcement support mechanisms there is. I mean, I don't see why they need so many. And the other thing is, why National Guard troops? Probably because the President didn't want to bring any active forces in. That might be, but still, 25,000. If you know anything about Army structure, 25,000 is the equivalent of a division. Okay? You could say you got 2 light divisions if you want to split it. Because theoretically 12,500, 13, 15,000 can make a light division. Either way it goes, that's a lot of freaking troops. And supposedly they're from all 50 states. And even the Puerto Rican territory. Okay? So you got to ponder yourself the question why. And yeah, there's some of the guardsmen there that are fat and are overweight. I get it. I get a little defensive on that because I was in the guard for 2 years. But then again, when I was in, we had guys that far exceeded the weight regulations. It's just that you got some people there that are truly there to serve their country in that capacity. And others are there for whatever reasons. But neither here nor there, because, yeah, some of them are not setting the example that they ought to for their respective states' National Guards as far as upholding the standard and the honor of the uniform. But that's another conversation for another time. But back to the whole thing of why are they waiting until 2 days before his inauguration to decide that they need to vet these people, even though they've already sworn an oath to the Constitution. Now, I did see a video clip of one of the adjutant generals talking about there would be a smooth transition of military power. I don't know if that was a slip of a tongue or if that's what he had been briefed and it just came out and he shouldn't have said it. I'd like an explanation on what they meant by smooth transition of military power. That's, that one caught me as interesting, to say the least. So folks, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. If what I would like to say is the worst case scenario does happen, okay, which there's strong indications that's what's going to happen, then be prepared for draconian laws, measures, and everything else to start getting stovepiped into the congressional legislature. All right? You think the passing of Obamacare was bad. When they take Joe out and put Kamala in his place, well, I'll just say it like this. We'll have every reason to legitimately rebel. All right? So, find your like-minded people. Work with them. Get to know each other. Compare notes. Gather intelligence. And be prepared for what is about to come down the pike, folks, because when I say draconian, I mean draconian. He's already stated that he's going to issue a national mask mandate. That will probably be followed by a national vaccine mandate, which will be followed by, if you don't have a certificate of vaccination, you can't work, you can't travel mandate. A magazine capacity mandate, to eventually just an outright we're coming to get your firearms mandate. And they're going to shovel that stuff through just as fast as they can. And I hate to say it, the GOP, given over power party, is going to sit there and going to whine and cry like a bunch of babies, but not do a darn thing to stop them. And I'm talking about the ilk of the Mitch McConnells, the Lindsey Grahams, the Tom Tillises, the Richard Burrs, just to name a few, in the Senate. And in the House, those 10 traitors, and amongst several others. So, those are some things that I'm anticipating we're going to see. And remember what I talked about last week. Get you a network of 3, no more than 5. And link to another network of 3, no more than 5. Stay off social media when you communicate. learn to meet at various times and locations, and start looking at non-electronic means of communication. Okay? Non-electronic means of communication. And I'll not elaborate any further to that. Okay? So, and just prepare as best you can, folks. Till tomorrow, take care, stay safe, stay vigilant, stay armed, old soldier.